Welcome to Aquarian Anarchy, everybody. Yes, Marcus, I called an audible. I'm not reading the quote off the top anymore. I am Chad. You see Marcus and Nico down below. We have a very special guest making his second appearance. Hotep Mordecai, the Conservatarian. He's Black John Wick now. You know him as Jeff Charles. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us yet again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's fun.
All right,
welcome aboard.
So we're gonna get into this issue. We talked about it on Twitter a couple of weeks back about a national divorce, secession, a breakup. We're gonna get into that in just a moment. First, I'm going to go through our quote. And Nico, I need you to get ready for our promo while I'm reading this quote. Here we go. Murray Rothbard says, "If the bulk of the public were really convinced of the illegitimacy of the state, if it were convinced that the state is nothing more or less than a bandit gang writ large, then the state would soon collapse to take on no more status or breadth of existence than another mafia gang." And with that, we will go right into our promo. Nico, hit it.
Yo, we're about to go into a great episode. And without further being said, I would like you to promote Nigga Power, where you will help us out and donate $5 for a brother, me or my man Charles. I mean, Marcus and Chad, they're always included, but for this sake, just help out with the Nigga Power and donate that $5. And I think we're on the same page for where this conversation goes. So if you donate to us, you donate to the cause of niggas. Thank you very much.
Jesus Christ. Niggas can always use some more power.
We do. We most definitely do.
All right. So with that, Marcus, we have our work cut out for us. We are going to be talking about secession, and we're going to try to not sound racist when we talk about secession. Here we go. So we are headed down a path where it looks like this shit is inevitable. And Jeff, you had some comments about how you thought it either might be too late or it wasn't possible or it might be ugly or whatever it is. I'm going to let you go ahead and explain your case for why you think it either isn't possible or it's less likely or maybe it's going to be difficult and or whether you're even in favor of it to begin with, even if it were easy. And then we will crush your argument.
I actually did a piece on this and on Red State. It's actually behind the paywall, but I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea. I just think nothing is impossible. I just think it's very likely. Now, I think that something like that could happen if, say, the federal government were to crumble, or if people were to say, we want to dissolve the federal government. That all sounds great. But realistically, is that going to happen? Is the national psyche going to ever get to that point, no matter how much we supposedly hate each other? Because we are divided. I'm just not convinced that everybody is as divided as they want us to think. I mean, could something like that happen? I mean, if the federal government were to dissolve and then we just have 50 separate nations, people have talked about that. That might be possible. But I'll say this: if it is going to happen, it ain't going to happen in our lifetime. And honestly, I think that we have become so complacent as a country that we are letting the government get more and more power, even when it's annoying to us, even when we don't like it. And I just the way we've become so what's the word I'm looking for? Not lazy, but complacent. Domesticated, complacent. I mean, as a nation, we have. I mean, there are a lot of people who do want actual freedom and they want to fight for that freedom. But honestly, I mean, if you look at what happened with this COVID hysteria that is still going on, I mean, we have become complacent. Yeah. Like I was on, I can't remember which podcast I was on. I was it was on the Red and Black show, or no, I can't remember. Anyway, but they asked, it was on Sonny Johnson's show. She asked if America, when this whole COVID thing does pass, because they're not going to be able to keep it going forever, even though they want to. When it does pass, what will the nation have learned about the role of government and how society works? And I had to give her the answer. I said, nothing. For most of us, we've learned nothing from us. I do think that there might be a smaller group of people who have, and that's a positive sign. But as a whole, when we look back on this, I don't know that we're going to say that we really learned much from it. So is it possible? Yeah, of course. I mean, Texas talks about seceding all the time, and that talk will go away soon if we turn blue, by the way. But I mean, it's possible. I just don't think it's likely.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of want to dive into myself to a couple of the points. Number one, I agree with you on a lot of your points. And I'm in 100% favor of secession in any particular way. And I want to kind of back up and kind of define what I'm talking about when I'm conquering this. And that is that I saw a meme probably last week that said the first thing you need from people if you're going to get anarchy is that people will have to become anarchists. And I think that is absolutely true. You can't I've heard libertarians on multiple fronts say, I believe in anarchy and I want to have anarchy, but it's just never going to be possible. And I think that that the first thing that has to happen for us to achieve anarchy in any particular way is for more people to believe that it is possible. So I think that that step in this particular argument you've already taken. You are already conceding that it is possible to get to secession. Where I would agree and disagree is I do think that, for instance, and I know that we bring him up a lot because he's a good friend of ours, but I do think that Adam Kokesh had the best strategy to getting there, and that is putting a referendum in front of the American people where that's an option, where they have the ability to say, yes, I think that we would be better off with 50 individual states. That all being said, that might, you know, he didn't do all that well with the Libertarian Party. So when looking at strategies to how to get to freedom, secession comes up a lot. And we have several friends that are Mark Kreslin's as an example, who are very involved in the secessionist movement. Also Marcus Ruiz Evans of CalExit. And one thing that Marcus says, kind of to your point, Jeff, is that, for instance, Rhode Island would have a hell of a time being its own country right now. That would be very difficult for it to do. But places like California and Texas, and possibly some of the other larger, more economically large states might have like New York, for instance, might have an ability to do that as well. Probably not Illinois. Nico, but just because y'all don't know how to do nothing. But
wait, hold on, Sonny boy.
Where'd Chad go? Okay, there he is.
But no, resegregate us. I'm on that.
Right. I don't know what he's doing.
Oh yeah, Chad, you want to play these games?
So, but at the end of the day, I think that
I think we froze up.
We did?
No, I see everybody perfectly fine.
Right. I might be Chad that froze up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see Chad anymore.
Okay. So just to kind of continue, I think that at the end of the day, that it will take some baby steps. I think that, Are you back, Chad?
Yeah, my bad, y'all. I can't apparently move this thing. It disables the mic and I couldn't hear anybody. So,
okay.
Pardon me.
That's okay. And so I just, to finish up my point. So I do think that if for instance, today, all 50 states said, fuck the United States, we're going to fall apart. I do not think that would work. I don't. I think that the majority of people are not prepared for secession today.
Right.
But I think we're moving in that direction. So that kind of hits on some of that.
Yeah, I want to hear Nico redirect.
Well, I mean, he agreed with how secession wouldn't work only due to the fact that people are way too divided more than they meets the eye, more than that, like, they really perceive. Like, if all this shit, like, really, really, like, crumbles, think about all the interactions you have to do with the people of your inside neighborhood that nobody really took the time to get. Your neighbor might really, really like hate you. And you never know it. You absolutely never know it because you don't take the time to like really go out there. So then when you explore more of your community, and this is on the side of you not really exploring your community, you don't know everybody's viewpoints. So if one person is jabbed and another person is not, then it's like white versus black all over again. Like, oh, you're one of those people. You don't believe in science, huh? I bet you believe that the Kraken's real or some shit like that. Like they'll just completely dismiss your notion. So therefore, segregation is really heavy based on certain groups and understanding of viewpoints. And if we take away that notion, then there's always the notion of still my skin. There's still a problem with that. There's so many different sections that divide people. Now, if people were in their own little areas and it was segregation, if you will, and I don't care about skin color, we're talking about jabbed from unjabbed, I think it'd be a different story. Or it would be a much bigger deal to work with opposed to being scattered and not knowing who is left to right. That's my point. So yeah.
So Chad,
right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to allow Jeff to kind of respond to what you said and everything. I want to hear from our guest a little bit more, and then I'll give my my take.
Yeah, I would like to understand, because Marcus, you said that we are moving in that direction, but from what I'm seeing, like I said, I think we're becoming more complacent about the government expanding. It's expanding like every single day. So, like I said, it's possible, but if it is, I think it's going to get a lot worse before we actually do start moving in that direction. But I would be curious to know what you're seeing, because you might be seeing something that I'm not. What are you saying that is making you think that we are moving more in the direction of people valuing actual freedom?
Well, I guess any of the three of us could actually probably field that. But what I'm actually seeing more on the ground is, I have said this before, say 150 years ago, Lysander Spooner was out in the middle of nowhere. I think he was in Ohio, and he was probably the only anarchist in Ohio. Yeah, that's all. And I felt I would feel bad for him. He's the only one out there. And then, you come to the turn of the century, 1900s, Emma Goldman's out doing her thing. And then you have all these 1 and 2 people. And then this weird guy comes on the scene in the more or less the 50s, named Murray Rothbard, who says, hey, you don't even have to be a socialist to be an anarchist, and and says, how about we try this mixing capitalism with it too? And suddenly a ton of people went, oh, that makes sense. And we've seen in the past, I'd say I've more or less been a full anarchist, if you will, for about 5 years, and I've seen where I was one of the only to there's a shit ton of us at this point, and that's just 5 years. And I think that you're right. There are a bunch of sheep out there who are doing exactly what they're told. They're lining up, doing everything they're told. You can look at Australia and see where it goes, right, if we continue to do that. But you also see massive protests in the streets. You also see massive protests in New York, in Los Angeles, in places that you would not think would be people that think for themselves, that beyond titles like anarchist or conservative or liberal, just people tend to, in large cities, be more trusting of the government, and they're not. And I think my personal opinion is that with a lot of this COVID nonsense, I think they've gone too far. And I think that what they've done is let the genie out of the bag. And once people get a taste of freedom, that's
what genie's in a lamp or a bottle. He's never in a bag, Marcus.
Right. Okay. They let him out of the bottle.
Don't mix your metaphors.
I'm mixing metaphors.
The bottle's in the bag. It's
right.
a bottle.
That's right. The bottle is in the bag.
It's one of those wine skins or something. I got you.
For sure.
Right.
No, I'm talking about Old English that you drink.
Oh yeah. Okay, the Crown Royal,
sure.
Old English. Yeah, I got you. All right.
But I do think that people are beginning to wake up, and I think the reason I think in terms of chess, and I try to think 2 steps ahead. And one of the things that I look at is I think things are too bad right now for it not to be planned to be too bad. And in my opinion, they're waiting for a savior to come in and dominate. And what we're seeing is that people are starting to not toss away ideas like capitalism, for instance. I don't like that word, but that to use that word, they're not throwing that away. What they're throwing away is centralization of power, and what you can see that in evidence in Bitcoin. And because of that, people looking at decentralization of power, they are more likely to go on and go to the next step. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm saying that once again, we are moving in that direction, but it's an underground. We're still a minority. It took 3% of the population to overthrow the largest empire the world had ever seen in 1776. If we get to 10%, we'll overthrow this one.
So there was something I wanted to ask, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, that's right. So what do you think the road to that type of society would look like? I mean, because to me, I still have trouble believing that it could happen non-violently too. Because if some states want to secede, the progressive crowd, they want to control everything, right? Mm-hmm. They want to control everything around them. So if Texas wants to secede, I don't see them letting that go peacefully. And nobody wants a shooting war. And the secession would be probably the only way to have a type of national divorce. But how would that even come about? Let's say we're the ones who are in charge of making sure that we become Ancapistan. How do we make it happen?
Whoops, unmute my mic. It's interesting that you lay that one up to me, because that was kind of where I was going to be going anyway.
I read your mind.
The way I see this is, first of all, the fact that people are too complacent actually, I think, feeds the overreach of the monster of tyranny. I don't think it's over yet. I don't think it's anywhere close to over. Right. You, Marcus, you say you think they've gone too far. I don't think they're done going as far as they're going to go at all. And that's what's going. So that, you have this old saying, hard men create good times create soft men create bad, harsh times, and then, those harsh times create hard men, and then the cycle repeats. We are in the process of that complacency costing us dearly. Mm-hmm. And that cost is going to wake more people up to actually, and look, some of us have already begun the process of withdrawal to a certain degree. Uh-huh. Okay. And so I don't necessarily even think that it has to be so much of a functional withdrawal. Once there's enough of an actual withdrawal, whether it's on paper or not, in a formal withdrawal from this system, from this process. And the other thing is too, I look at this because this has become, first of all, if you go back and read the Patriot Report by our good friend Hotep Jesus, and then you go through like the series that he's been putting together where he goes through it the last few weeks, you see that what we have here is not actually a country and a government, but a corporation that we have all been made part of. And the other corporations that are incorporated into that government, when they file their articles of incorporation, right. They are what is actually driving this whole process that we are seeing right now. If you look at it, like, I know, Gavin Newsom does his stuff, and you have like mayors here and there that are doing things. But by and large, this stuff is coming from corporations.
Yep.
All of the mandates and everything, all of the people who are following through and enforcing it, the corporate arm of this large corporation that is the United States government is actually what's driving this. And so I think the big withdrawal that needs to happen is people starting to see that writing on the wall and to recognize that their local people who they can go and see face to face, and who they can count on if the shit really hits the fan. Like, what's one of the things that we haven't even seen this shoe drop yet is what it looks like when all this shit that's offshore and everything that hasn't gotten into the ports yet, when that stuff really gets backed up to the point where people can't eat, people don't have resources anymore. Okay, so what's your fallback plan? Do you have enough food of your own? Do you have people in your local area who you can go to get eggs, to get grain or whatever, beans, rice, you name it? That's the sort of thing where when people are pushed to that point and you give them the blueprint by necessity for, oh shit, how do I do this? Let me figure out how I can survive without all these things. You create a group of people who all of a sudden realizes, I don't need these motherfuckers anymore. Like, why do I need? When the shit hit the fan, they weren't there. They didn't have anything. The shelves were empty. And I went to my farmer's market. I went to this place. I went to I networked with people. So I think in a certain sense, what is happening is actually accelerating that curve.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree that there's a complacency and that people are kind of taking some of this stuff lying down to a certain degree. But I think that there's so much ground being consumed that it is going to go too far, and it's going to push people to the point where they have to become more self-reliant. And once you find that self-reliance, you realize that you don't need that stuff anymore. And so, like, withdrawing from and seceding from the corporate structure and doing more group economics and family and internal banking, where you're not going to your big banks and all this stuff for funding and resources, and you're actually buying land, and you're taking the land that you have and you're cultivating it and making use of it. It becomes a whole different structure. And I think that's why there's been such a push from some of these big corporations and some of the elites to gobble up land while nobody's looking, is because they see, like, that's kind of the escape route. And so they're kind of smoking the fox out of the hole to a certain degree. Right. And they're trying to plug every hole possible. But human beings are nimble and resourceful. And I see this as actually pushing to that point where we're gonna get
question. How do you get somebody out of the corporate mindset when all we've been driven to as an American culture based on collegiate and school, and then after work, down the pipeline? How do you get them in the mindset that I don't need a corporation anymore?
The empty shelves, I mean, think about, where do you? I'm not going to say that you buy drugs that are not legal or anything like that, but where do people acquire these things? Huh? Yeah. No. So people acquire these things, right?
We doing
they
this right now?
Acquire them without going to
because
Walmart.
I'm black?
And without no.
Make him uncomfortable, Miko.
That means that he has a pusher, man. Yeah, I see what you're doing, colonizer.
People acquire the things that they want and need without having to go to Walmart, Costco, Publix, whatever to get them, right? And so I think that, to answer your question, how do you create that mindset that disconnects from that corporatism, is empty shelves. Right. And not being allowed to go into the store because you don't have a card that says you can go into the store will create black markets and underground. And once you do that, good luck getting those people back out of the black market.
Yeah, when it's cheaper.
Right. It's so that's my semi response to that.
And what you were saying earlier kind of dovetailed with what I was saying, because I'm thinking, like, if this does happen, like, we're not just going to go there. There has to be something that happens. We're not feeling the pain yet. I mean, we're feeling pain, but we're not feeling enough pain. And that's basically what you just said. I mean, if they do go further and there is more pain, and you might be right. Maybe they did miscalculate in how far they could push us. Maybe they didn't. but it is going to have to take some.
Remains to be seen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take. I think it'll have to take a lot more pain, and I hate to say that because that means that people's lives are going to be ruined.
Oh yeah, no, there are going to be some people who will be lost. Yeah, definitely. Like there are going to be some people who will not wake up in time before Freddy Krueger gets them.
Yeah, and what I'm concerned about, I mean, we talk a lot about socialism and communism. I'm starting to wonder if we should actually be more concerned about fascism. And when I say fascism, I mean like actual fascism. I'm not talking about, you don't agree with woke stuff or you don't agree with the left. I mean, when you see corporations working hand in hand with the government, we're not talking about socialism anymore.
Nope.
Are we? I mean, one of my colleagues at Liberty Nation, the site that I write for, he brought this up, and I had been kind of thinking about it, but when he laid it out, I was like, you know what? I think this might be more of an issue. I mean, when you have the government working with Facebook to suppress more information, to do more censorship, that's a problem. When you have the government forcing corporations to require vaccines or testing, that's an issue. And we know the corporations, they want power, they want money, they don't want communism. There is no corporation that wants communism because that means they're gone.
They don't have power.
But fascism, where they have the government working hand in hand with them and allowing them to, or forcing or controlling their businesses, at least they still get to get that money. So if that
they're controlling the government, so it works. It works well for them.
Yeah, and then you have that, and then you also have the press, which is a huge part of the issue. So I could see all of that creating enough pain to where people will finally adopt that mindset. Because really, when that happens, when people do revolt or have a revolution, it's because you've pushed them too far. Correct. And right now, we are still complacent. That's why I say I think it's possible that it could happen, and it would probably be distant in the future. But I think
it's going to look more like a retreat than a secession, though, I guess is what I'm saying, is that it's going to look more like a withdrawal, you know what I mean, a recession. And I don't mean recession in terms of economic, but I mean like receding, away, apart from the cities. And because if you look at like how American society used to be, it was much more rural, much more small town.
Right.
And then the industrial age, and again, these large corporations drove people into cities because they needed factory workers. And you had the way that the educational system evolved into basically creating a bunch of good, obedient factory workers who were not really good at questioning things and like questioning authority, like obedience to authority, standing in line, not talking, looking at the authority figure in the front of the room and shutting up and letting them talk and let them tell you what you needed to know. And, that sort of thing actually built this. You see it now, right? Pay attention to the person who's telling you to do something and then do it. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble. You'll go to the principal's office or you'll get recess taken away or whatever the fuck.
Does this mean that like I didn't listen in class? Because like I was like a fairly like solid student for the most part. Like,
right.
But I did enough to get by, and I drew mazes and played games and stuff.
I think this was all for the kids who had ADHD but were never prescribed those pills. Yeah, right. I think we're doing right. I think we're doing good.
That's right.
So I think for me, one of the things I want to kind of redirect this to because Jeff, you're largely saying it's possible, but it could be way off in the future. I think it could be tomorrow, and here's why.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's likely to be tomorrow, but I think it could be.
Okay.
And the reason is we've already seen because I largely agree with Chad, but I also am I'm by nature an optimist, and I really right, and so ultimately I look at history as a teaching tool, and one of the things that I've seen is several years ago, let's say, I don't remember if it was 4 years ago, we were certain that we were going to have this unified European bloc that was going to everybody was going to have the euro, everybody was going to develop and do that, and that went to shit when Britain said, go fuck yourself. And they in essence seceded from Europe. Now you can make the argument that it's different, I get it. It was also different when France.
Yeah,
when France decided to tell their king to go fuck themselves, it was different than when the United States said, "Go fuck your king." But it was still the same seed. And when Britain seceded from United Europe, they kind of paved the way. And you're seeing other countries in Europe starting to move in that direction as well. And I'm not saying that again, it's not likely to happen tomorrow, but the groundwork for this happening, for anybody that hasn't watched our interview with Marcus Ruiz Evans, I strongly suggest it, because he tells people they are laying the groundwork. It is happening in California. They are starting to get what they need.
This is left California. This isn't this isn't Irvine or something like that, where it's conservative California. This is they want to secede too. They're like, good luck without us,
Bye-bye.
and so
And so they're laying the groundwork. And where I think it happens is either, and my guess is it'll be both. It'll either happen in Texas or it will happen in California. And it will happen exactly because of the reasons you just laid out. Texas isn't going to accept fascism. I get that it's starting to become more purple or whatever. Okay. That's because a lot of people have decided to stay the hell home. And that is largely, I think, what that you're seeing in that is they realize that this is all a dog and pony show, and they're not playing in the reindeer games anymore. But most Texans are not going to accept fascism. They're not going to take. I don't care if it's George W. Bush, who was originally from Texas. I don't care. They're not going to take their orders. And you're a Texan. They're not going to take their orders.
No, Jeff's a Californian living in Texas. No, I'm just fucking with you.
No, it's been a decade now, so now I can call myself a Texan. I guess.
All right. You live in Austin, though, so you're still a Californian.
Right. But Texans aren't going to take their orders from a fascist, and they may tend to be more on the conservative side of things or on the right. And in California, they're not going to take their orders from a fascist either. And that's because they want communism. They want real communism. Now, you and I and everybody here knows that real communism isn't possible, but they don't. And they're not going to take orders from a fascist. So you're going to have people laying that groundwork over the next few years. And I really do think that it is possible for it to start happening, but it will have to happen, in my opinion, in one of those two states, at least. My opinion is it will move in that direction within the next, I'd say, 50 years. We're going to be looking at a real divorce. And now that may not be my time.
Which do you think will go first? Because I think that there's that movement to secede in Texas and in California, and I do agree with you. It will be one of those two states, maybe even at the same time. But which do you think will go first?
I think it'll be California, and the reason is because California is I think the fifth largest economy in the world by itself, and they just have the infrastructure to make it work. And because we're not talking about California becoming a anarchist state. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about Texas becoming an anarchist state. Again, these are baby steps. One of the things that Murray Rothbard really nailed in his opinion on things is we need to learn some shit from these socialists. They know how to take over a society, and they do it incrementally and they do it slowly. And we need to learn that tactic. And
a lot of times purists are their own worst enemy because they won't take a small victory because it's not the complete victory.
Right. And so I think that we are moving in that direction. I do think that they are exacerbating it. And I actually think that we are experiencing a reaction. We're experiencing them saying, we better get control of these people. These people are about to be free. And I don't know why. I don't understand the mindset, but I do think we're moving there. Now, again, I'm an optimist. I just laid out, a possible scenario. Do I actually think that it's going to happen in the next year? No, I do not. I think we are headed for a shitstorm. One of the things I also want to touch on, Jeff, that you mentioned is we hope for no violence. I absolutely agree. We hope for no violence. It is possible. John Locke pointed it out that there was a bloodless war in Europe in his lifetime that he was at the kind of tail end of. It is possible to have a more or less bloodless war, but it's not likely. And the
I'm not
realist
going to
in
lie
me-
to you. I think that the way that things are going and how like blatantly ignorant people are, like if we take this, and I know this is left field, but let's say, for example, Dave Chappelle. We got a whole mass of people ready to cancel Dave Chappelle instead of like Netflix and
Right.
things of that nature. And that's just over some jokes, my guy.
Right.
That's just over some jokes.
No shit. Yeah.
So like when it becomes much more of a critical process, once we got tested with the first wave of Mama Vid, and everybody started snatching toilet paper and shit,
the lockdowns and everything.
It showed how some of the people who've truly conformed will act genuinely. Those will be the people out in the street acting violent and idiotic, but the ones with common sense will be in their home saying, "This is not my war."
Yeah.
So I think there will be bloodshed, but I don't think it will be to the magnitudes that people are kind of hoping or imagining.
I think hoping is part of the key too. They are definitely trying to get a civil war. And I still
big facts.
Yeah. And I think that the reason they want that civil war, and that's a different thing than secession. We're talking about peaceful secession.
Yeah.
Civil war, the reason that they want that is because the same reason that what happened in what became the Soviet Union, people saw a corrupt government. Sound familiar? Saw a corrupt government with a leader who didn't know how to lead. Sound familiar? And they rebelled.
Let's go, Brandon.
Right, exactly. and so
I'm sorry, I did a hate speech. My bad.
So they rebelled from the right largely, but the left was more organized, and that's how we wind up with the Soviet Union. And I think they're trying to create a very similar situation.
So Jeff, with Texas and Florida, okay, I know that we've talked about, like, if you look at the past several election cycles, how the needle is moving more purple. Do you think that that's changing in the last couple of years because of how people have like seen, like, okay, well, I can move there. Like I live in Louisiana, and like the Louisiana governor was like the first one to do, mask mandates and everything this year, coming out of this, like they had knocked them down in April and they were back in July. And, LSU was the only SEC school that had, vaccine mandates and mask mandates or whatever for football games. And I'm looking at like how some of these states are kind of pushing people to Texas and Florida. Do you see that it's possible that needle may be moving back, or at least stopping, if not moving back in the other direction, because of the exodus of people who are coming, who are like not down with all that shit and who want what Texas is right now and what Florida is right now versus, just leaving California because the taxes are high, and then basically turning Texas into California when they get here, or in Florida, turning Florida into New York when they get there.
So just to make sure I understand the question, you're asking if this is evidence that people maybe are waking up a little bit more, or if it's
that people might actually be turning Texas and Florida back more red, or more, I don't even want to say red blue, but like more free and less like, lockdown mandates, fascist.
It's hard to tell right now. It's very hard to tell. I suspect it's a little bit of both. I mean, because people like me, I was already a conservative, and I left California because there was more opportunity here. And I suspect a lot of other conservative Californians are moving to Florida and into Texas. I don't really buy the notion that the reason why there's this push towards Texas going blue is because of Californians moving out here. I don't think that there are enough of us that have moved out there to do that. I think what's happening is that the Democrats are winning people over. I think that's, I mean, there's some other issues too, like with demographics and stuff like that. But I think the bottom line is the Democrats are not afraid to fight in areas that don't vote for them, because they do play that long game. So, but at the same time, I do think that there is something to the notion that people, like say from New York or California, they're coming to redder states because they're just they're tired of living under a system that they disagree with. And especially because the progressive governance is so bad that it's made things worse. They created that pain point. I mean, if you live in Los Angeles, you're dealing with a lot of homelessness issues, a lot of blah, blah, blah. I mean, you guys know Michael Malice. He moved out here to Austin, and he has never lived anywhere other than New York City, and he loves it. But they messed it up so bad that it drove him out. So I think that there's a lot of both going on, but I couldn't tell you which one is happening more, or which group is moving here more.
Yeah, and if it's getting offset with immigration and things like that too. Yeah,
that too. Yeah.
I also think that there is something to be said. Like, for instance, when we like to in this country, we divide things into red and blue and all of that stuff. You know, I've never fit really into either one of those camps. And one of the things we don't take into account is that the majority of people, or at least around half the people on average, don't vote. They don't care. They don't go out. They don't play with that game. And some of those people that are not red and blue team. And I'm not talking about like the libertarians or the Green Party. I'm talking people that just don't give a shit to vote. Like me. I don't. It's not that I don't think that it's not valuable. My vote is not going to matter. It just isn't. I'm in Indiana. They're going to vote red. It is what it is. It does not matter. You know, and they've pushed the libertarians to nothingness because they've got it controlled. But at the end of the day, most people are not us. They do not think about this shit all the time. They do not think about all that stuff. But right now, a boat ton of people are being made to think about this.
Pay attention. Yeah.
That's true.
So I think that we have to take into account that a lot of those people are getting fed up. They're starting to look at their governor and say, why haven't you done something about this? If the federal government is mandating this bullshit, why haven't you done something about this? And when that governor has either, like in my case, I live in Indiana, he has no real answer because he mandated that shit too. He's a Republican, but he mandated all that shit too. So I will give him a little bit of props. He did not mandate the vaccine. I have to give him props for that. And oppose that. But other than that, he was on board with everything else. And so when somebody is looking at that kind of situation, why aren't you doing something and realizing that because I'm part of the problem, the government is a gang of burglars. There is nothing they provide for the world. I think Thomas Paine had it correct when he said they are the no abilities. They don't have any abilities, so they come after the people that do and try to control them. And when people start waking up to that, and they are, I grant you slowly, but when they start being forced to look at it and go, this is just a bunch of criminals. Why are we giving these people power? And they start asking those questions.
Especially when they're not abiding by the rules. Because we've always known that, but when it's a mask mandate and they go to a party, they go to a wedding and all this other kind of stuff, that's more in your face than just them like embezzling, insider trading, and all this kind of shit that you have to like find out through some investigative reporter, you know, and then you have to like read all the legalese and see how they violated this like loophole or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot more nuanced with that shit than it is with, hey, you said we have to do this stuff and we can't go anywhere. Like the governor of Gretchen Whitmer, her husband, like took his boat like out. You know what I mean? Like there's all these stories of people like outright violating the shit that they're making everyday people do, and just doing it in their faces. And so it is, you can't help but wake up to some of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and even here in Texas, I mean, it was a little bit surprising to me at first, but among Republicans, there is a growing movement to get rid of Greg Abbott. And they're thinking he did the lockdown orders too. He allowed the mask mandates too. He didn't do like DeSantis did, and he's good on other on
well,
some
DeSantis
other
did at first too, and then but lifted it fairly early. Like it was like June or July of 2020 when he pulled it, and he said we're never going back.
Fuck DeSantis.
Okay, but yeah, he did lift those orders sooner. But I mean,
very early.
This candidate Don Huffines, I mean, I saw him speak at CPAC up in Dallas, and he brought the house down. He got and all he did was bash Greg Abbott, who wasn't there, and people were giving him standing ovations. So I think that might be more of an indication that maybe people are just seeing that, just like you said, Marcus. You're our governor. What the hell are you doing? Now, right now, he's going against these vaccine mandates, so that's good. But even with all of that,
more of like a which way is the wind blowing kind of thing.
I think so, and I think that Republicans are not as excited about him. I think he'll still win, but I don't think people are really as excited about him as they were before, even though President Trump endorsed him. So I can see incidents of this moving in that direction. Question that I do have though, like if we were going to make this happen, what do you guys think about however we do it, or however it's done, an effort to get people to focus more on local politics? Because one of the reasons why we're in this mess is because we focus more on the sexy federal government than on the federal or than on the local areas that we actually live in and that actually affect our lives. Do you think that people might be starting to focus on that a little bit more? Or do you think that it's still the same? Or how do you think that figures into all of this? Because I think it could be a very important part.
People watch too much TV, and so they're going to do whatever the TV tells them, and the TV tells them just pay attention to president and the Senate and shit like that. And so that's going to be a hard. Now, the one thing you are seeing is there are more and more. People are becoming semi-celebrities for going to their school board or going to city council and raising a ruckus. But
even to that point, there was more that came out of that other than people just becoming celebrities. I mean, you have 50, probably even up to 100 by now, who are actually running for their school boards.
No, that's true, and that's good. That's huge. Yeah, that's a big deal. And so that does give me hope. Another thing that gives me hope though is I made a joke about it earlier. Let's go, Brandon. You put out I saw part of your video from last night was about that issue and about like self-censorship and that sort of stuff with students and things like that and like just people in general. I think that there's a flip side to that because I even like the study that you quote that you mentioned. I would even like want to ask the person who conducted that study, like, well, wait a second. Did you ask like more detail about that? Because I remember I was self-censoring just because like I don't want to be perceived as a dick or, I may feel like not completely confident in my perspective on something. And so I may be a little more reticent to say something. And so like with all this stuff where, when you heighten this cancel culture and everything, I think it just maybe like exacerbates something that was already there. But what I want to say is that I look at what Facebook is doing, where they're taking now let's go, Brandon is hate speech, according to Facebook. I look at that big, and I mean, we're doing this we're broadcasting on YouTube, but I will say, that we are also broadcasting on Libre TV. What's that?
Wait, that was satire, right? That tweet.
What was
the Facebook one?
Oh shit, that was you just man, you got like 1 billion retweets out of that thing too. You motherfucker. I thought that was real.
No, funny story though. Funny story. I'll tell you really quick. And you might have seen me tweet about it.
Look, that shit sounded real. That was good shit, man.
And that's the thing. It's believable. It's something that they would do.
This is something I've been saying for a long time. The Onion and Babylon Bee have their work cut out for them because they have to keep up with reality.
It's hard. It's very
really hard to do satire.
And I'm going to tell you, a few hours ago, I got an email from a journalist working with the Associated Press, their fact checkers, asking me to confirm whether or not that tweet was satire. So they're actually going to fact check. I was kind of back and I said, yeah, it's satire, but they are going to publish a piece where they fact check satire. And I thought that the quote that I put there was stupid enough to where people would be like, okay, maybe this is a joke. But I think
you even misspelled the word whole.
Yeah, I sure did.
I was like, but anyway, so the reason I'm bringing that up is because like you have a locals account.
Yeah,
and we're doing this. We're simulcasting on YouTube, but also on Libre TV. Shout out to Saul G. What back to my original point about receding and kind of withdrawing and going to some alternatives. That's kind of they're almost forcing that hand, where they're forcing people. Because if your account on whatever it is, that's why Gab is what it is. Like a lot of the people on Gab, say whatever you want to say about Gab, but a lot of the people who are there because their Facebook account doesn't exist anymore. Their Instagram account doesn't exist anymore. You know, like, and then there's Minds, MeWe. I mean, there's all these different BitChute, and you know, there's all these different Odyssey, whatever, all these different things
that nobody's on.
That. For now, right? But the thing is, the underground. I sent when Marcus and I first did this show together. The first episode that I appeared on with Marcus back last April. The day before I came on, I said, "You need to watch Demolition Man," because he had never seen it before.
And I did.
Oh yeah.
And that's where I think we are. Like, you can't exchange bodily fluids, no more handshakes. You know, you do like these cosmic high fives where you do like this and you don't ever touch anybody or anything like that. And, you know, sex is like just like you put on like a little thing and you like experience it, but you don't actually do it. And all the babies are created in a lab. And also there's this whole underground in the sewers where Dennis Leary as was it Edward Friendly?
I don't remember his name.
Yeah, is the kind of runs the show down there. And they're eating rat burgers and everything else. I mean, we're kind of headed in that direction. We're like, do you want to be free? And maybe you might have to live in the sewer where it's a little more dangerous and it's a little more dirty, or do you want to live the sanitized, you know, very, very controlled life above ground? And that's kind of where I see this. That's the secession, I think, that I see. And the social media thing just kind of brings that to light.
That's big facts.
Yeah. I do want to jump in here and say again, we are, although I agree with you largely, Chad, I do want to throw in that's another duality that we are trying to create. I plan on being a pirate. When I'm not playing when I say that, I plan on, you know, running between both. I'm going to live as best as I can in the underground, if you will, but I'm going to be getting shit when I can from the system. I'm going to be pulling from it because the best way the pirates had it right. They knew how to take down the powers that be in their time by attacking them economically. And we can do the same thing. And if they're not going to let me buy shit at their store, I'll steal their shit. I don't care. If I'm not allowed to buy that stuff, I'm taking it. You know, go fuck yourself. I'm a pirate. I don't care. And that's my way of fighting the system. And I will. I'm not going to until they make me. But if they make me
thievery.
No, I don't condone.
We don't
condone
thievery. Being black right now.
We're voluntarists.
Right. I don't condone thievery. That's for sure. But I also need to feed my family. You know, as much as I agree with the NAP, and I think that libertarians fight about the NAP way too often. At the end of the day, I'm going to feed my family. And if that means I need to steal from Walmart, I'm going to steal from Walmart. It is the bottom line that they will create a black market. And if I can make a profit off of that black market, you can bet your ass I'm going to, if they have removed any chance of me doing what I need to do to supply my family on the up and up. That's just where I'm at. And I'm not alone.
Jeff?
Big facts.
Are you going to steal from Walmart, Jeff?
No, I'm envisioning Marcus with a pirate hat and an eye patch. I mean,
right.
I'm with
you.
But it does, beard.
Right.
It does kind of. I mean, it's one of those. To your point about the NAP, Marcus, I think people have way too much philosophical circle jerking around some of this stuff, and it's not enough about like the practical reality. I hear people talk about like, you know, you shouldn't be like the thing with the that thing that happened on that day in January, right? Like, oh, this is wrong. This is like, bro, these you may disagree with their reasons for doing what they did. I thought it was kind of funny too. You may disagree with their reasons for doing what they did, you know, like trying to, you know, overturn the election so that, you know, whatever, that kind of shit. Okay, but like let's be real. Like if some real motherfuckers who were going for the right reasons went and did that shit, like I disagree with the libertarians who are like, you should never do this, whatever. Because no, like these are the people who are bombing and murdering people all over the country. I mean, all over the world, and they're stealing from you day in, day out. Like, nah, fuck them. You know, like we were watching people celebrating, fucking burning down the streets in Minneapolis and everything else.
Right.
Where was the going after the damn government buildings that are doing that are perpetrating this stuff? Why didn't you go to the police precinct and do that shit? Why you had to tear down the Foot Locker or whatever and go to the fucking anyway? It's well, that's what we talked about with Rhonda when she came on. Same thing.
It's even with the Department of the Interior, nobody's mad about that because they were leveling protests. Everybody is fake as fuck on this. Like everybody is a hypocrite. Nobody actually cares about this stuff. If it had been Black Lives Matter who went into the Capitol, they would be celebrated. Nobody would be okay with it,
especially if it was Trump had been elected.
Right,
you know, like, it would be like oh no, this is a righteous revolt because Biden was duly elected and they were trying to get the results overturned because Trump cheated. Because we had 4 years of Trump cheated before this.
We did,
and all of a sudden now election results can't be questioned anymore.
Yeah, and on the day that he was inaugurated, there were people rioting, and I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's that's why I can't stand the hypocrisy as much. That's why the lack of consistency pisses me off. Not just because it's stupid and because it's wrong, but because it's dangerous. It's destroying us. The fact that we're just so obsessed with supporting our team that we are willing to tolerate behavior from people who have the same letter by their names as we do, we knowing damn well that if somebody else on the other side did it, then we would be all up in arms. No, if you're going to be against something that's wrong, then be against something that is wrong, no matter who does it. This team sports mentality is destroying us, and it may even lead to what we're talking about here. But nothing good is coming of this because our leaders and our chattering class and our influencers know that they can do whatever they want, and their people will still back them up no matter what.
And they'll send them money because they're feeding them red meat.
Well, Trump said it himself. He said, I could shoot somebody in Times Square and my popularity or something like that would grow. And he's absolutely right. He is absolutely right.
Yep.
And
we had a governor here in Louisiana, Edwin Edwards. He said, unless they find me in bed with, what was it? It was with a dead woman or a live boy, they can't touch me. And it was like,
what?
And now in 2021, I don't know. He might still be okay, even with one of those two.
Yeah, that's the thing. He might still get away with that shit.
Right. At the end of the day, I think that my personal opinion is we are moving to a world. And again, I admit I'm an optimist, and I really do believe the good guys win. I believe that at the end of the day, when things get done, the movie ends. And I want to return to that in just a second. But when the movie ends, the good guys have won at the end of the movie. And I also want to add to that.
Demolition Man, too, by the way. They win.
What was that, Chad?
In Demolition Man, the good guys win.
Right. And I do need to also point out that because I do have a spirituality, that we need to always remember this is the testing ground. This is not the end of the story. And prove your worth here. And how you prove your worth here is by standing on principle, standing up for what's right, stealing from Walmart when you have to, and,
what's justifiable to steal from Walmart? Like, I understand like a pack of underwear, or like, you need some vegetables, or some fruits, but like a candy bar, or like one of those like Time magazines that they got right in the slots about like Arnold Schwarzenegger finally getting divorced or some shit like that? Can we take one of those?
The answer for me, really, Nico, is when they don't let me buy. When I walk in with $100 and they won't let me buy a candy bar.
Oh yeah,
I'll take the
we
candy
staying
bar.
in that shit. We staying in that shit for sure.
Well, I mean, because at that point, if the government mandates something like that, then they're violating the non-aggression principle, and the corporations are going along.
That's exactly my point.
They're trying to starve you because you're not doing what
right. And so
want.
at that point, it's not an act of initiating aggression. It is self-defense and like survival at that point. And it's just a I respect people who will go on starvation campaigns or sit-ins and things like that, but like that ain't me. I'm not gonna lay down in front of a tank.
Bitch. Nope,
I'm not gonna lay down in front of the tank. I'm gonna do like they did in Red Dawn. I'm gonna jump on top of that bitch and throw a grenade in the top of it. And
and wave
enjoy that grenade, fella.
You feel me? Like
So we are at our hour mark, and I know Jeff needs to get going. Jeff, I want to point something out to both our listeners and to you, frankly. I do think that of the people that we've talked to, you are one of the most important voices that we've talked to. And the reason for that is because you're relatively mainstream, and you've already, like I talked earlier when we started, you got to be an anarchist inside first. And then you can turn things around. You're already there. We showed that the last time you were on, and you've more proven it this time as well. You're an anarchist inside. We may disagree, but shit, that doesn't matter. What anarchy means to you is what anarchy means to you. I'm not here forcing you to have whatever opinion that is. But because you're relatively mainstream, you can get to those people that aren't. Most people that are mainstream are not going to watch a podcast called Aquarian Anarchy. They're just not going to. But they might go to Red State and they might read your articles, which, by the way, I do suggest people do that. You have some wonderful work out there.
Links
but
in
I
this
think
description.
Right. And I think you are very important to the movement of freedom because you touch lives that we never will. And yes, I think people can come here, learn things, meet people, find a way to develop their ideas. You're getting those people. I think that is extremely valuable, and we need more people like you. So I want to thank you for being out there, for being that guiding light of beauty and strength and love and compassion that you are. And I want to thank you. And I also want to congratulate you for getting some firearms. That's awesome.
And look, Marcus wants to say thank you. I want to say you're welcome.
That picture will go down in history.
Man, I colonized your arm, man. You saw how white it looks? Look at that. Look at that.
What's on top of your head? Black. What do you look at when you're asleep? Black. So guess what? Nigga power. So with that being said, subscribe to the Patreon and support a nigga.
We appreciate you, Jeff. This has been great, and don't troll me like that again. That was you had me. I thought
if I ever put breaking in front of a tweet, it's satire unless I say different. Unless I say different in the tweet. But if it says breaking, it's going to be satire.
Nice.
You killed me, man. You killed me. That was well done, though. What did you end up with? That thing blew up.
I think it's been shared like 3,000 times, over 3,000 times. I think, and I think it's still going.
Yeah, it's still going.
Wonderful.
I put my "Let's Go Brandon" article beneath it because I thought it would be funny. But no, that's great. So well done. Very, very good job, Griftmaster Supreme. That was good shit.
And get your "Let's Go Brandon" T-shirt at Aquarian Anarchy store.
That's right.
Links are below.
Right. What's up, Natasha? We see you. All right. With that, I'm Chad. You see Marcus and Nico. We appreciate y'all coming out every Wednesday. Don't forget. And go check out Jeff's stuff. All the links are in the description below. And thank you again, Jeff, for coming on. We appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Welcome all the time. Stay free, everybody.